Even people who are brand new to the lore of Warhammer 40K have at least heard of the Chaos Gods. They are perhaps the most defining entities in the entirety of the setting, besides the Emperor of Mankind. And simply put, if there were no Chaos Gods, there would be no Warhammer 40K. From the virulent diseases and demonic parasites of Grandfather Nurgle, to the world-breaking murder curses and skull-obsessed insanity of Khorne, all the way to the insane truth-seekers and summoners of Tzeentch. For as long as the Chaos Gods have blighted our reality, life in 40k has been absolutely miserable. But what if I told you that the 4 Chaos Gods we know of, Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh and Nurgle, are not the only Chaos Gods in the Pantheon? No, I'm not talking about the Eldar Gods or Gork and Mork, or even the Starchild. I am talking full-on actual Chaos Gods. That instead of 4, there are 8 Chaos Gods in canon Warhammer 40k lore. But who are these gods? Why don't they show up as often as their well-known siblings? What even is a Chaos God? How do they form? Where did these new ones come from? And more importantly, why would Games Workshop randomly introduce 4 more Chaos Gods? Were the originals not good enough? Do we really need 8 of them? Or is there something else going on here? Is it maybe possible that these extra Chaos Gods have been in the lore since 2nd edition? In today's video, we are going to cover all Gods of Chaos, not just the original 4, but mainly focus on the 4 Chaos Gods that most people don't even know about. We're gonna talk about how gods form, how souls influence them, and how they influence us, and then cover the canon candidates for every single unnamed Chaos God. Also ending with an honorable mention of 2 canon Chaos Gods that I have seen no 40k YouTuber ever even mention. All that and a whole lot more in today's video. Alright, enough talking, let's get into the lore. Across the galaxy, vast armies battle on an uncountable number of worlds, each fighting for a self-proclaimed greater purpose. Humanity brings forth levels of genocide unthinkable in the name of their carrion lord, the God Emperor of Mankind. Mutants rebel against their dark overlords, burning trillions in the process. Xenol's empire spread and wane, slaughtering all those who would dare oppose their dominion. But no matter who or what, all factions in Warhammer 40k dance to the laughter of thirsting gods. The galaxy knows only war, but the carnage and slaughter contained within are but a shadow of the turbulent and violent warp. The Immaterium, or Sea of Souls as some call it, is where all actions, thoughts, and emotions echo and take a life of their own. Souls are the very thing that drives the realm of chaos. The stronger the emotion, the more it causes the tides and eddies of the warp to flow. The greater the soul in question, the more power courses through both the material and immaterial realms. This violent place is home to nothing short of chaos. Swirling entities of the dark ambitions of all mortals have coalesced into whirlpools of power. Some will know these entities as Khorne, the Blood God, Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways, Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, and Slaanesh, the Dark Prince of Excess. Yet this pantheon of 4 dark gods is far from alone. The Chaos Gods number beyond the 4 that are worshipped by most mortals who sold their souls to chaos. Beyond them, there are a myriad of entities in the Sea of Souls. Some are mere predators, hunting and feasting on the minds of psychers. Others are gods in their own right, but few ever rise before being consumed in the violence of the warp. Demons are perhaps the most numerous entities within the warp, but almost all of them are an echo of their master, a fraction of their power. Yet more importantly is the great game of supremacy played by the Chaos Gods. A game, if ever won, spells the complete and utter doom of all existence. When the Chaos Gods fight their endless wars, the warp trembles, its reverberations splitting and bleeding into the material universe, creating something we know as warp storms. The gods, even the ones bound to the Eldari before they fell from grace, hold strong rivalries and deep-seated hatreds for each other. One amongst them might prove to be the dominant force for a while, but it is only a matter of time until other gods work together to usurp their rival, and the great game is once again reset. On occasion, the Chaos Gods might even cooperate to work towards a unified goal. but such a thing is incredibly rare. One of the main examples we have in the lore are the Black Crusades, where the 4 main Chaos Gods pour their power straight into the War Master, allowing Abaddon the Despoiler to burn the galaxy once more to beat the Emperor. But the only time in all of canon where all Chaos Gods worked together and pulled in all their power into one being was during the last days of the Siege of Terra, right before and during, when the Arch-Traitor and War Master Horus Lupercal fought his Godling father, the Emperor of Mankind. But before we get into all of that, we first have to establish what is a god. Like, what is the actual in-lore explanation of what they are? And at what point can you officially call a warp entity a god? In the novel Betrayer, Magnus and Lorgar briefly speak about the pantheon of chaos, bringing some rather interesting arguments from each perspective. To Magnus, the chaos gods are sentient storms, and terms like gods or demons were wrong. Essentially, a filler word for lesser species. Lorgar, on the other hand, argued that those words are as good as any, and in all honesty, they are both correct, because what people say and believe holds power in 40k. 10,000 years later, Fabius Bile has his own experience with a god, Sanesh specifically. But unlike the Primarchs, he does not see the gods as gods, more like angry gas clouds that just so happen to be aware of their surroundings, as seen in Clone Lord. No gods, random confluence of celestial phenomena, interdimensional disasters, echoing outwards through our perceptions. I think, therefore I am. They do not, so therefore they are not. Gods are for the weak. I am not weak. Yet, let's be honest, Fabius Bile is wrong here. He's denying the primordial truth. Gods are real. They are dark and twisted. That they do not interact with you does not mean they are not there. They are random and do not always deal upon their own accord, but that does not make them any less or more real in 40k. But for an actual definitive answer on what a god really is in Warhammer, let's take a look at Dark Imperium Godblight, when the returned Robute Gilliman questions an Eldar Farseer and Space Marine Librarian on the meaning of divinity. What is a god? What is the definition of divinity? Power defines gods, but they are all false. Falsehood is the essence of godhood. They are lies. They may seem to be divine to primitive minds in their ability to grant favor, but they are inimical to all mortal life. The gods of chaos bring only horror. They see us as playthings and would destroy us all in the end. They are evil, everyone. Man needs no gods. The Emperor was right. Natase. Not all gods are evil, said Natase. You are wrong, Donas Maxim, and you speak only of the gods born out of the Immaterium. You neglect the Catan, the Yingir, we called them. They too were gods. He sighed, collecting himself as if he were a schoolmaster about to deliver a much simplified lesson to children that they would still not understand. You are right when you say that power defines a god. Temporal, spiritual, physical. It matters not. The Eldar fell silent for a moment. Natase goes on to define gods in several ways, in two broad categories, those of the Immaterium and those of the Materium. The gods of the Materium would be entities like the Catan. He even hinted at older beings, perhaps the Old Ones might have been similar. Yet these gods have their powers limited by the rules of the material universe. The gods of the Warp, however, are ephemeral and do not have to obey any law except those of the Warp. These gods are also more diverse. Some are agglomerations of souls, or are even mortals. Some of the warp gods might eat other gods, and due to the warp, they are impossible to truly comprehend. But no matter their origin or power, faith is their most important aspect. While the Catan do not need faith to live, the gods of the warp do need this. But the four great gods of chaos have become so powerful that they have become self-sustaining. But, of course, faith still empowers them, kind of like a nitro boost in a gas tank. Quick side note, you might even be able to argue that the hive mind, by these rules, is a god. due to the mindless dedication of its swarms. But for other gods, fate is vital. Without fate, they collapse into formlessness, becoming non-sentient vortices of emotion. Unstable, they die. So, how does a god gain power? How does fate and prayer even empower them at all? Let's take a quick look at how souls work, as they are vital for understanding the differences in the 8 Chaos gods. Just bear with me for a moment. I promise we will get to the gods soon enough. Souls are the very thing the Immaterium is made out of. For every living and sentient being in the galaxy, there is a tether in the warp anchored to them. Some souls are small, such as those of the Tau. Others are much larger, like those of the Eldar. But no matter the size, these souls are the essence of everything chaos and makes it the biggest threat to mankind. Souls sway both realms in their own ways. For a moment, imagine the warp as a literal ocean and the material universe as dry land. The more violent the warp gets, the more souls are moved to a singular goal or emotion, the more they form a wave. A temporary thing. These waves might seem insignificant, but the larger and more violent they get, the more impact they carry. Ships traveling through the warp have to withstand these violent waves, but when enough power and emotion are put behind one singular belief or emotion, these violent waves can flood dry land, essentially a warp storm tsunami. And what makes souls so important to the ruinous powers is that they define everything. Souls are currency, they are food, amusement, weapons and tools. When a person dies, their soul is mingled with the countless others who died before them. Some are even consumed by demons as a quick snack. Those who devote themselves to gods have their souls swallowed by their deities, instead of fading away. This is also how Fate in the Emperor protects your soul. You essentially become part of the star-like god that Guilliman witnessed. And the souls of Psykers do all of this, but on a much larger scale, capable of manipulating reality with the powers of the warp. It has even been noted that the warp curdles around some souls, ripening them with sickness, such as Erebus or Cor Farron. It is by exerting control over souls that the Chaos Gods have become as powerful as they are, something that for them has become a game. For other, lesser gods, such a thing is beyond them, as they need the active worship of mortals to properly feel them and keep them conscious. And there is no better way to manipulate and control souls and mortals than through the strongest emotions. And what emotion is stronger than suffering? Lorgar explains it best to Magnus when his legion attacks the world of Armatura, as seen in Betrayer. Suffering has always fueled the warp in random stains and stigmata. Now we learn the virtue of control. Can you hear it? Can you hear the pain stirring the tides? Can you hear the crash of those waves, Magnus? Can you hear those black tides beat? A million hearts bursting out loud, as rhythmic as drums in the deep cold. Lorgar lifted his hands higher, gesturing with subtle relish, directing his invisible choir. The tides of the Sea of Souls can be altered by mortal hands, brother. Listen, listen, we are reordering the warp itself, Magnus, changing it through pain. We are rewriting the song. Lorgar drew in shivery breaths as he continued. There, a ship burns in Latona's atmosphere, the cries of the doomed souls echoing in the Imperium. And there, a warship plows into the surface of Elixis, digging its own grave, taking 100,000 souls shrieking into the afterlife. Do you hear them dying, Magnus? Do you hear the song shifting in time to their extinguished essences? He was laughing now, raising a hand to the heavens, weeping as he whispered. Every life, every death, every cry of pain across these burning worlds thins the veils between the reality and the first realm. Call it Hades or Hell, Yahannam, Naraka or the Underworld. Call it the Warp, call it whatever you will, but I am bringing it forth onto the material plane. Called was the genesis of the storm, Magnus. I will make an entire subsector suffer enough that the curtain falls and the 500 worlds drown in the warp. He turned at last, eyes aflame with psychic fervor. "Tell me you feel it. Tell me you can hear the million demons shrieking and baying, desperate to be born upon these burning worlds." Magnus felt it, as real as the wind he'd never feel against his own flesh again. A pulling, a tightening of the weave behind the physical universe, far from the impassioned sensation his brother described. The sorcerer felt it with clinical distraction, no different from an equation written on parchment and begging to be solved. Lorgar, in his madness, was doing more than breaking the natural order. He was rewriting the code of the universe. Of course, Lorgar's impact on the warp is but a drop in the bucket when compared to the war in heaven, which gave us the turbulent Sea of Souls and 3 of the 4 main Chaos Gods we know today. Fate is an extension of our emotional connection to a deity. Engaging in rituals, praying, participating in communion, or even discussing your religion can empower a god in much the same way that offering a soul to it would. And that's why souls are really freaking important in 40k. They are your tether to both the god and allowing your prayers and empowerment to actually reach them. Talking about gods, let's take a quick look at the original 4 Chaos Gods, re-establish them with the most recent lore descriptions, and redefine them so we can properly understand what the other, newer 4 Chaos Gods actually are, and what makes them fundamentally different. Don't worry, I'll keep it brief. See it as a quick lore refresher. Khorne is the very embodiment of wrath. He is the Lord of Rage, and his sole desire is to drown the galaxy in a tide of blood and slaughter. Khorne does not care from where the blood flows, as long as it does. He and his servants are dedicated to heedless slaughter. He sits on the skull throne, clad in brass and blackened iron, with a helm made of skulls from conquered kings, covering his hound-like face. From his endless demonic legions to mortal worshippers, they offer Khorne the skulls of those they slay. These trophies are stacked onto each other, from human heads to tyrannid skulls the size of hat blocks. Each skull is a victory in the name of Khorne, but never enough to quench his thirst for blood. At Khorne's side rests a great two-handed sword, a legendary blade capable of laying waste to the substance of worlds with a single blow. This fell weapon is known by various names to the races of the galaxy, including Woebringer, Warmaker, and the End of All Things. It is said that when Khorne takes up his sword, a single sweep can cut through reality itself, allowing Khorne's demonic legions to spill forth. And once, in his rage, he cut open a rift to a fiery pit, which became the very hell shared amongst many societies in the galaxy. Tzeentch is the unknowable chaos god of fate, weaver of destinies, and also often known as the Great Conspirator. The hopes of every sentient being from every universe are preyed on by Tzeentch. He watches over the plans of his playthings as they unfold into history, toying with fate and fortune for both his own entertainment and to further his unfathomable schemes. Tzeentch is fed by the need and desire for change, an integral part for all living things. From the poorest hiveganger to even the High Lords of Terra, all humans dream of prosperity, freedom, and a better tomorrow, all wishing a greater change in their lives, which only furthers Tzeentch's twisted and confused plans. Yet Tzeentch does not sit by the sidelines to observe others be fulfilled or disappointed. He is a schemer. His plans are woven so complexly that they touch all living things, whether they realize it or not. While Khorne is a brute and savage warrior, Tzeentch is a cunning magician and strategist, takes great delight in the plotting and politicking of others, and favors the cunning over the strong. He offers magic to those who willingly join in his plots. Ambition and a ceaseless hunger for power are what drives his demons and followers. Tzeentch and his demons are a formless distortion, a whirlwind of spells and etheric violence. Nurgle is the great corrupter, the master of plague and pestilence, the fountain and architect of rot itself. He is the embodiment of the truth that all things, no matter how solid and permanent they seem, are subject to decay, and even the process of creation is merely the beginning stage of destruction. Nurgle is a putrid corruption, an utterly foul thing. Although his every act spreads pain, misery and death, Nurgle manages to be a vibrant god of laughter. To Nurgle, life and joy spring from rot. His followers become bloated monstrosities, spreading their filth with grinning mouths. Yet Nurgle's most important facet is the regeneration that comes from decay. In the ultimate moments of despair, there is a hope that drives many mortals to either excel or fall. Slaanesh is the Lord of Pleasure, the dark god dedicated to the pursuit of earthly gratification and the overthrow of all decent behavior. Slaanesh is an obsession, excess in all things, from gluttony, lust, megalomania and everything else. Mortals who give in to their desires have the Dark Prince whispering into their ears, tempting them to go ever further. Slaanesh was given life by the immortality and hubris of the ancient Eldari civilization. As their empire reached its zenith, their people became lost in their own decadence, for they experienced sensation to a far greater degree than any other species. Their reflections in the warp were what gave birth to She Who Thirsts. The fall of the Eldari was signaled by the bird scream of Slaanesh, a tsunami of emotion that announced the Prince of Pleasure's arrival in the realm of chaos. While the other gods prey on everything, Slaanesh delights in nothing more than consuming the Eldar. Those dedicated to Slaanesh are perhaps the most varied of the Chaos worshippers. Some are drug-fueled blade masters, like those of the Emperor's children. Others enjoy experiencing every form of torture and pain. The demons of Slaanesh are as beautiful as they are terrifying. The legions of Slaanesh are a rapturous sensation on the battlefield, tempting, fast and deadly. So, who are the other 4 Chaos gods? If you've watched my video about the Deep Warp, then this will be quite familiar to you. These gods were given to us in the Burning of Ommad, Horus Heresy Force World book, which, by the way, is freely available for anyone to read online. But with the recent release of the 3rd edition of Horus Heresy, these gods actually got a lore update. Yeah, we know even more about them than in my last video. I'll first verbatim read out the description of each of these Chaos gods, and then we will go over the 40k lore candidates for who each of them might actually be. Because, believe it or not, we already know 3 of them for certain, and they are a lot more powerful than I originally expected. Like, stronger than the original Pantheon powerful. Number 1. Ravenous Dissolution. The hatred that swirls within the warp encompasses all things, and like the dragon of eternity that feasts upon its own tail, you know, Ouroboros, this hatred extends even to itself. There is no rationale or sane logic from these creatures, and to have expected anything else would be foolish. The Ravenous Dissolution is both chaos by name and nature. This self-destructive hatred for others, no ally to anyone, only a new and unpredictable enemy. Ravenous Dissolution is hatred. Hatred of oneself and everything it encounters. It is self-destructive, an outcast, and the embodiment of the end and the death of all things. Number 2. Malevolent Artifice. Chaos likes to mock and twist everything mortals create, and of course, this extends to technology as well. The very drive to create has been perverted into a raw force of malevolent destruction within the Immaterium. Conjured forth into real space, such demonkind harness the work of mortals as a vector for their own annihilation. Their monstrous machine entity forms at once a mimicry of flesh and artifice. Every action made to demonstrate their supremacy over both mortal beings and everything they deign to create. This is the domain of a creator, one who rules supreme in the art of making and design. Number 3. Encroaching Ruin. This dominion is the purest form of terror that few can stand before and remain sane. It hungers only for destruction, that all things mortal meet their predestined end and crumble into dust to be forgotten. To this singular end, it moves forever, driven by a nightmarish purpose which subsumes the petty divisions of demonkind. Encroaching ruin is the domain where chaos is in its purest form. It is death, fear and terror incarnate. Number 4. Formless Distortion. Demons of all domains manifest into insulting, disgusting parodies of mortal forms. But the true essence of chaos is endlessly shifting into the next unknowable thing. It changes and perverts everything it touches. Some demons who cross the veil into real space embodied this ceaseless distortion to its fullest extent, shaping themselves into rolling agglomerations of immortal flesh and bone, for whom death was simply one component of the eternal metamorphosis they would inflict upon the material world. Formless distortion is just that, something alien to everything else. It has no form, and it distorts. It is what makes chaos something unknowable. And no, this is not the same as Tzeentch, which is Formless Dissolution. Now that we know how they are described in the newest version of the lore, who are the candidates for these gods? Who are they? Well, let's start with the most obvious candidate first, the official 5th Chaos God, who indeed is still canon. Malice, not Malal. Go watch my Deep Warp video if you want more information on that. Malal has never been canon, Malice is. But alright, let's talk about him. Malice is the most obvious god of ravenous dissolution. But what do we know about Malice? Well, we know that currently he's worshipped by a Chaos Space Marine chapter known as the Sons of Malice. The Sons of Malice are rather, well, malicious as you might imagine. Once every century, the Sons of Malice gather thousands of prisoners who are all sacrificed and brutally butchered for their renegade god. Worse yet is that to fully drive home that Malice is ravenous dissolution, the Sons of Malice actually cannibalize other Space Marines, something that extends to eating both loyalists and traitors. Just as the demons of Malice can thrive on killing other demons, their mortal counterparts are literal cannibals. Malice, like his siblings, is known by several titles: the Exalted, the Renegade God, the Outcast, the Lost, and the Hierarch of Anarchy. More importantly, he is perhaps the weakest god of the entire pantheon, as he was capable of entering the material universe in M41. Something the Big Four can't do because of just how powerful and massive they are. This, of course, had to come at a price, namely the sacrifice of the 11 greatest warriors of the Sons of Malice, known as the Doomed Ones. These warriors had to fight their way through a space hulk, where they were attacked by their former brothers, who began to mutate into chaos monstrosities. Only the strongest and most cunning of them passed, but even with a victory, their life would still be taken. This very contest embraces everything that Malice is. Being attacked and eaten by your brothers, having to fight each other mid-contest, and winning through strength and trickery, only to die anyway, so you can be sacrificed to bring a Chaos God into reality. 11 doomed ones were gathered over the course of 1100 years, and with the sacrifice of these champions, Malice was brought forth into the material universe and promised to help the Renegade chapter to retake their ancient lost homeworld, currently held by the Imperium. Alright, so that was Ravenous Dissolution. Time to take a look at Malevolent Artifice, and you already know who that is going to be. There is only one true candidate for Malevolent Artifice, and we all know that is Belisarius Cawl. Hold on, wait, no sorry, I mean Vashtorr The Arkifane. Vashtorr is the demonic current demigod of engineers, artisans and scientists. He gets his power from reckless curiosity and inquisitiveness. He is a perversion of those who analyze and force nature to bend to their will. Tzeentch is change in the pursuit of knowledge. Vashtorr is the untethered progress of science and engineering. Those two might seem similar, almost like the sides of the same coin, but they are very different. Vashtorr is the discovery of a new understanding, something innately more scientific, while Tzeentch is the change invoked through sorcery and trickery. Vashtorr's rise to power is unknown. Perhaps the artifice of the Old Ones proved a bit too cruel and gave birth to him. Maybe Vashtorr was created during the Dark Age of technology, when the Men of Iron rebelled against their human overlords. Or perhaps he has been awakened since humanity first discovered fire. Vashtorr is the Arkifane, but what exactly does that mean? What the hell is an Arkifane? Well, he's the master of the Soul Forges, which oversees the mutation and binding of demons into flesh metal war machines. Just a small side note, the Soul Forges were first introduced during 4th edition with the Soul Grinder, and although Vashtorr was not yet named, they did lay the first groundwork for him to be there. His nature of dealing in straightforward manners already existed, such as demanding that each Soul Grinder sacrifices souls to keep the Soul Forges working, and should any Chaos God attack the Soul Forges, all Soul Grinders would forgo their previous allegiance to protect the Forges. So yeah, he has been around since the 4th edition of 40K. As the Arkifane of the Soul Forges, Vashtorr is the arms dealer of chaos. From lesser demons to the Chaos Gods themselves, all come to Vashtorr for weapons. As an independent entity, Vashtorr has secured himself theoretical immunity from being betrayed by the other gods. You know, don't bite the hand that gives you warp nukes to blow up your rivals. Yet this might change if his power grows too great one day and he steps from being a demigod to a full god. After all, the great game does not allow for power to be shared. This also requires us for a moment to talk about the demons from the domain of malevolent artifice, which we saw during the Horus Heresy. How could Vashtorr have had his demons while not being a god yet? Well, there are two answers to this question, which both can be true at the same time. The first answer is that some demons buy power or weapons from Vashtorr. In exchange, they must fight for him, making the Soul Forge even stronger. Some demons are unable to pay this price as easily. Instead, they offer direct servitude and temporarily become Vashtorrs to command and control. At the same time within the warp is not a linear thing. Slaanesh is currently the youngest of the Pantheon, but at the same time, Slaanesh has always existed and never has existed in the first place. It is a contradiction to the material universe, but one that makes sense in the warp. Vashtorr is and is not a god. He always will and never be a demigod. If he is to ever become the god of malevolent artifice, he will always have been the god of malevolent artifice. And seeing as to how the Arcs of Omen campaign went for him, he is going to become a god. No questions asked. Alright, so Malice is ravenous dissolution, Vashtorr is malevolent artifice. Now let's take a look at encroaching ruin. And I'm just gonna drop this here. Spoiler warning for the end and the death. The Dark King is the god of encroaching ruin. Initially, it was believed by many in the galaxy that Horus was the one who would turn into the Dark King. But if you have read The End and the Death, you will know that our beloved Neold, also better known as the Emperor of Mankind, is actually turning into the Dark King as a last chance to defeat Horus. Akche, who was/is the blessed Lady Cyrene, reborn once again, says it the best in The End and the Death Part 1. Such is the inevitable fate of all advanced psychic species, and the Dark King is our fate. This war, my lord, is not one of loyalists against traitors. It is not about the conquest of Terra and mankind by chaos. It is certainly not about a son at war with his father. This is the triumph of ruin. Horus and the Emperor have taken their conflict to such a pitch that we are about to suffer the same fate as the cursed Eldari. The human race will die in its bird fire, consumed by blood rage, pestilence, violent transmutation and blind desire. And from the grave pyre of our civilization, the broken galaxy will see Horus rising, absolute and complete, as a new, true and terrible god. However, while she is right that the Dark King would ruin humanity, she and many others, such as the Eldar, were wrong to believe it was Horus who would turn into the Dark King. Horus had turned into something supremely powerful, far beyond what the Emperor himself was during the Horus heresy, and so, begrudgingly, the Emperor began to drink from the warp. By doing this, his power increased exponentially, but it also robbed him of all things that made him human. As the Farseer said earlier in the video, when speaking to Guilliman, mortals can become gods, but with the Dark King, there was a colossal price to pay. The Emperor, beloved by all, was to be humanity's approaching, some might even say, encroaching ruin. Yet because of Alania's person, the Emperor was convinced to stop drinking from the warp. In a single act, Alania's person saved not only the Imperium, but all of humanity. However, it was almost too late to stop himself from becoming the Dark King. The Emperor had to sacrifice his caring and loving nature, which would split from his soul and become the Star Child, as he expelled the power back into the warp. It is also important to understand, the Star Child is an element of the Emperor, but not a Chaos God, or even similar to them. In a lot of ways, this is an example of a good god in 40k, but that's a video for another day. The master of mankind would be broken by his wayward son, but humanity could survive with a carrion lord ruling over them for 10,000 years. Fun fact, this encroaching ruin god has one recorded demon that speaks of encroaching ruin. And he is here, he is the man beside you, the footsteps behind you, he is all around you, he is Samus. Samus, who has been with us since the first ever Horus Heresy novel, and learning of his fate and the origin and the end in the death was both heart-wrenching and something absolutely spectacular. Instead of spoiling his identity, I suggest you check out these novels yourself. If you can survive the John Grammaticus bits, it's more than worth it. With Encroaching Ruin, Ravenous Dissolution, and Malevolent Artifice all having a clear answer, that leaves us with Formless Distortion. If you ask me, there are two potential entities I suspect of being the yet unawoken Formless Distortion, Be'lakor and Drach'nyen. But hear me out, they are both just as likely and unlikely to be the leftover god. Let's start out with Be'lakor. Being the first ever mortal to be elevated to Demon Princehood might at first not seem like something that could boost you to the power of a god. After all, every Demon Prince holds but a fraction of their patron's power. But Be'lakor is rather unique in this. Be'lakor has a very long history, starting back at the dawn of time, possibly even pre-War in Heaven. Other storylines go back to the Age of Strife, where he ruled over entire empires before destroying them and moving on to the next. Be'lakor is a scourge to the galaxy. He has ruled over numerous worlds and has been venerated as a god by countless mortals. Now that there are forces in the galaxy capable of not only crippling Be'lakor, but maybe even destroying him forever, such as the Grey Knights, he has chosen to stick to the shadows. He has appeared in 2 Black Crusades, tending to his own agenda, as much as that of Abaddon the Despoiler. He even attacked the phalanx of the Imperial Fist, but this plot was ultimately defeated by the arrival of the Legion of the Damned. Be'lakor is owned by all 4 Chaos Gods, but soon all 4 began bickering and fighting over their shared champion. Because of this, each Chaos God began to create more champions and demon princes from their mortal followers, trying to spite Be'lakor. This resulted in Be'lakor resenting and hating his new rivals, and he always sought to undermine them. Every new demon prince saps away at the once formidable strength of Be'lakor, and through millennia, his power has become a shadow of what it once was, even though he's still the strongest demon prince around. Yet this might also be a part of the great game, his power being drained, and when he lies low the champion of one god, another is empowered by it. But we know that Vashtorr is going to be a god at some point, right? Well, Be'lakor seems to be awfully aware of this. So when Vashtorr boards the rock, the home ship of the Dark Angels, he is suddenly attacked in his raid by Wordbearers, Alpha Legion, and a whole host of undivided demons, all loyal to Be'lakor. Let's take a look at an excerpt from Arcs of Omen Vashtorr, when the two demigods throw hands for power over the rock. Vashtorr strode towards the nameless gate. He would smash a path through the remaining Dark Angels alone if he had to. Before he could reach them, however, the shadows righted and thickened around him. The Arkifane felt a hostile power envelop him. He sensed contempt and infinite duplicity, rushing like currents through the penumbral energies, and tasted bitter poison. Mocking laughter fitted around him as the Galerium Exactor vanished behind a mass of shadow. Vashtorr uttered a string of machine code odes as he sought to break free from the malefic conjuration. He loosed a storm of infernal motive force that blasted shadows to tatters. He slammed his hammer against the flagstones beneath his feet and summoned buried cables and wires that burst up through them to strike like serpents at the coiling darkness. The mocking laughter turned into an affronted growl, low, wet, and rumbling as that of some colossal hunting cat denied its prey. The shadows righted inwards with redoubled force, twining about one another into coiling ropes that lashed around Vashtorr's limbs, his body, and even looped around his neck like a hempen noose. Slashing wires and blasts of energy severed one rope after another and sent their frayed ends tattered away into the ashes. Vashtorr's eyes blazed, and the industrial glare momentarily drove back the darkness that was trying to crown him. Yet more and more ropes slitted from the gloom. Belatedly, Vashtorr drew back those parts of his mind that had continued to obsessively observe the strategic situation through the Vox and Auspex networks. He cursed himself for his compulsion to maintain a grip upon the wider strategic situation at such a time, realizing it had robbed him of the immediacy and focus he needed to stave off this onslaught. He suspected that he knew the name of his unseen assailant and thought they must be bending all of their considerable power to this attack. As shadows entombed him and dragged him into the waiting abyss, the Arkifane reflected bitterly that this was not the first time his compulsion to see and understand had been his undoing. Vashtorr expected banishment, yet instead, the light and solidity of real space bloomed about him once again. The ground was hard under his hooves, the light stark as it split from the countless stars speckling the dark void above. He had not been attacked, he realized, but rather summoned to the surface of the rock.
"The vainglorious fool wishes to gloat,"
he exclaimed. "No, not to gloat, but to humble one who needs reminding of their lowly place in the pantheon," came a rumbling voice from behind Vashtorr. He turned to see shadows coalescing into a towering figure whose vast wings blotted out the starfield. Be'lakor, the Dark Master, manifested from abyssal darkness, and even Vashtorr could not help but admire the sheer infernal majesty of this first amongst demon princes.
"Well would it have been, once mortal, for you to leave my labors here unimpeded."
"You are the lick spittle of the despoiler," growled Be'lakor.
"A spiteful thing you are, with little purpose and less wit."
"My purpose here is to remind you which demon deity holds you above the mortals. Which of us the despoiler on a thread, and then to send you back to lurk amidst your cogs." During their fight, Be'lakor did not come to kill Vashtorr, but instead delayed him and his forces as long as possible. Be'lakor is known as the Dark Master, and for good reason, as he is the Master of Shadows. The battle for the rock had turned into a three-way bloodbath, while Vashtorr and Be'lakor dueled. Vashtorr ordered his forces to pull back to his position, but as they did, they were attacked by the Dark Angels. Be'lakor's forces started to disappear, and in his moment of triumph, Be'lakor simply pointed to space. Loyalist reinforcements were arriving en masse. The Ultramarines and Nova Marines would crush whatever was left of Vashtor's forces. In a moment of raw spite, Vashtorr turned many of the Rock's guns on Be'lakor and all those who had to fight him, yet the bombardment was short-lived. Be'lakor roared and laughed as he was sent back to the warp. Be'lakor is in a rather unique position. He has the power of the Great Four in him, and he is capable of rivaling Vashtorr in his current state. I believe he could become the god of Formless Distortion. In a sense, he and his forces already showcased this by turning into shadows. In another sense, Be'lakor has the power of 4 Chaos Gods, but his form belongs to none of them. He only shares a base number of attributes, which we see with all stronger demons. Massive horns, a huge and strong body, massive leathery wings, all that kind of stuff. Perhaps Be'lakor's mastery of shadows is but the first step in him becoming the Formless Distortion. Personally, I believe he might also end up as the rival of Vashtorr. Malevolent Artifice brings the certainty of metal fused with demons. Formless Distortion, on the other hand, is formless, a fog, a mist or a shadow, the lack of physical contact. But for our second option, we have the End of Empires, the demon of the first murder, Drach'nyen, the exact opposite of the Emperor. Drach'nyen, the End of Empires, is one of the most powerful demons humanity has ever created. When the war in the Webway broke out, Drach'nyen hunted the Emperor and wanted his blood. He wanted to kill the master of mankind. During this, we see Drach'nyen take many forms, turning into a thing of claws, blades and spines. The idea of evisceration made flesh. It was capable of flying on burning wings, killing with extreme contempt and prejudice for everything it came across. There was not a Mechanicum priest, Sister of Silence or Custodian who could halt this thing. Drach'nyen was a demon given birth during the first murder in human history. The story of Abel and Cain from the Bible is its literal origin story. Ever since, Drach'nyen has ended every empire, and during the Horus Heresy, the Imperium was its next victim. We even get to see Drach'nyen fight the Emperor, as we see in Master of Mankind. Reveal thyself. The Emperor raised his blade, bringing it down in a crescent of fire. A tide of flame bellowed forth in an incinerating arc, bathing the ranks of the Neverborn before him. The echo of the first murder.
The Anathema,
was its sick, slick reply. Predators always revealed themselves in the seconds before they struck. Wolves howled as they chased. Sharks cut the ocean surface with their fins as they hunted. Here the ashen silhouette moved through the Neverborn's ranks, lesser creatures parting before its too human tread. Whatever the creature's true form was, it wasn't this muscled Stone Epoch war chief. It merely aped the form of the first humans. For the first terrifying time, doubt flickered within the Emperor's eyes. Monarch and demon ran at one another, sliding in and out of existence, outpacing their lessers on both sides of the battle. And the two entities, one the salvation of a species and the other its damnation, met blade to blade. Blood burst into the ashy mist, the Emperor arched, the warlord's body taut with the utter shock of agony. 5 talons, each one the length and width of a spear, dripped red as they stood proud of the Emperor's back. In that moment, as the claws ran red with his king's blood, Custodian saw what the rest of the species saw. The boy who would be king, an old man, cloaked and hooded, life running from his cracked lips, a knight in his prime, maned with dark hair, crowned with a wreath of laurels, a barbarian warlord, barbarous and strong, grinning through teeth turned red with his leaking blood. Images, identities, men who once were, men he might once have been, men who had never drawn breath. The Emperor's boots left a misty ground. He barely even struggled as he was lifted, impaled by the 5 spearing talons. His sword fell from his gloved hands to disappear into the shrouding fog.
I am the End of Empires.
The words belonged to the silhouette in the ashes, the Emperor's killer, speaking by twisting the thoughts of the humans in its presence. We all know what happens next. The Emperor forces Drach'nyen to become a sword, and Ra Endymion becomes its guard. To further showcase how Drach'nyen could be Formless Distortion, other demons call him the Thorn in Reality, or the Shard of Madness. It has been described as capable of drinking the energy of the Immaterium, like it's just water. Currently, this demonic weapon is in the hands of Abaddon the Despoiler. It is said Drach'nyen can take many forms, and that it only appears as a great blade in the hands of Abaddon himself, because that is how the War Master chooses it to be. Yet this is not its true form. In fact, when other warriors have tried lifting Drach'nyen, the weapon would fall from their hands after killing the thief, rending their body and soul apart. As to why Drach'nyen fights for Abaddon, none can say for sure, though such a pact can mean nothing but woe for the Emperor and his followers. Considering how Drach'nyen keeps changing forms, from a demon of teeth and claws to an ancient human warlord, capable of turning his fingers into spears, and even when contained as a weapon, Drach'nyen is a really good contender for being Formless Dissolution. Another fun fact is that in the End in the Death Volume 1, we see a demonic host of Drach'nyen being mentioned, something like a demon host but even spicier. But we are not done just yet. Yes, we have just covered the 8 gods of chaos, but there are 2 more. Now, I am mentioning these 2 gods more so for completionist's sake than anything else. Something, oh my god, 10 chaos gods in total? What? Starting with the Great Horned Rat. The Great Horned Rat, of course, is a chaos god from Age of Sigmar, so why mention him? Well, when Horus and the Emperor fought, gods that normally cannot be active in the grim darkness of the far future actually gathered around to watch them duke it out. However, while deserving of an honorable mention, he sadly is not a candidate to be Formless Distortion. The same extends to Hashut, but with the leaks of Votan, Hashut might actually become something new in 40k, who knows? But Dutch, I hear you ask, if these other gods, such as the Great Horned Rat, cannot be active in 40k, how could they have watched this fight? Well, I'm glad you asked, friend. 40k and its fantasy counterpart are connected through the warp, but the chance of Guilliman ever encountering Sigmar does not exist. Chaos is shared, but it's a bit like a one-way street, where going both directions is not possible. This topic is further explored by the writers of Warhammer in White Dwarf 514, and the End in the Death a little bit. In regards to saying the Great Horned Rat could not be Formless Distortion, the same sadly goes for the Raptor god. Raptors are those scary jump-pack Chaos Space Marines, and while often enough they can be dedicated to worshipping Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle or Tzeentch, it is also believed that they might worship a mysterious lesser Chaos deity. Sadly, this supposed Raptor god has no real lore to talk about and has only ever been explored in White Dwarf 231. In any case, I just wanted to mention these 2 as honorable mentions. Now, this video has gone over some truly crazy lore and theories, but I have one more theory I would like to throw out there. When the Emperor created the Primarchs, some people thought he used more dark powers than actual arcane science, such as Eldrad, as we saw in the Fulgrim novel. It is also known that the Emperor bargained for something with the Chaos Gods when he entered the Realm of Chaos on Molech, as seen in Vengeful Spirit. And as it's described in Era of Ruin, he stole the fire of the gods, like Prometheus did in ancient Terran mythology. But what if he took something even more? What if the Emperor destroyed the slumbering god of Formless Dissolution and created from it his 20 Primarchs? In the shadows of the past, we see Corvus Corax having transformed into something that is a bit closer to the demon Primarch Lorgar, which he hunts in said short story. Does this mean the Primarchs are indeed miniature gods, or are they shards of a broken god, all bound in one way or another? But what do you think of all of this? Which of the Chaos Gods that we cover today is your favorite and why? If you could make your own list of canon Chaos Gods, who would it be? Do you believe the 4 extra Chaos Gods are their own entities? Or are they just part of the main 4 gods and fill no space in canon that wasn't already filled before? Let me know your comments, concerns, suggestions, theories and ideas down in the comment section below. If you think I deserved it with this video, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. It helps push this video into the algorithm and it would make me very happy. Thank you for watching and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Bye bye.